It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show.
Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 381. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Daylight savings time is awful.
It is. Kodra.
Giant man, tiny horse.
Tam.
Kills you dead, no remorse.
Thalen.
Hi.
And yes, happy sleep theft weekend to you all.
Yeah.
You know what? If this can be the last sleep theft weekend, let it be.
You know it won't be.
I know it won't be, but that's what I always say because I don't want to be on standard time.
Yeah.
I want to be on permanent daylight savings time.
Yes.
I want them to steal one more hour of sleep and then never again.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree that is the best course of action. Because when it is a benefit to have extra evening hours, it's great. The part of the year that it doesn't matter, who cares if it's dark when you wake up and dark when you get home?
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, it's that's the opposite for me. You might want standard time all the time. I want daylight savings time all the time. Because for me, it gets dark at like 4 when it's standard time in this winter.
Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, daylight savings time is fine all year round.
Yeah. I want it to be
I would
light out.
rather it be, light out until almost 10 o'clock in the summer.
Yeah.
I mean, it sure is that already. It's already light out until 10 o'clock in the summer for us.
Yeah, it does not matter to me in the slightest whether it is light or dark or whatever in the wee hours of the morning.
Yes.
It just couldn't care less.
Yes, but
Give me that daylight after work.
yes, at driving home at 4 o'clock from the office in darkness is it does bad things to my brain. Also, the messing with everyone's circadian rhythm is extremely deadly in that it actually kills people. So let's stop.
So I have been playing a lot of Guild Wars 2. We talked about how I have reconciled actually enjoying the game, and I have been playing an excessive amount lately. More than I have ever played at any given time.
Finally pulled you in.
Yeah. It's finally, the Necro did it, honestly. It gave me a class that I actually enjoyed. There were aspects of the world that I already enjoyed. Because there was a time in 2017, I think, that I was playing it a lot. And at that point, what kind of hooked me for a little while was that I had hopped on the world boss train, and I found that terribly enjoyable. And in order to stay alive as a warrior during the world boss train, I was usually running around with a rifle, which in itself wasn't, class fantasy. That's not what I wanted a warrior to be, but it was effective. So it worked. But this week I have gotten back on the world boss train, and somebody remind me on my blog that there's a doodad that you can buy off the shop that you just click on and it tells you what bosses are up and teleports you to them.
Yep.
And it's pretty friggin' magical.
Yeah, the Central Terrio one is pretty great. There's also one for Maguma bosses, but it's less helpful.
Too slow.
Yeah, it's less helpful because you kind of need to be there a fair bit in advance to
So
prepare
you can
the
actually
map
get in the zone.
and to even be able to get into the map, yes.
Yeah. So, I've done, I think, all of the ones on the little doodad now. Of those, Drakkar was by far the worst.
Oh.
And it was fine. I just don't think we had enough people. And I'm guessing because it's a hard fight, people don't, face roll it or
So wait.
show up to face roll it.
Wait, Drakkar is included on the Central Terrio?
Yes,
I guess,
it is.
I mean,
Yes,
I
it
guess
is.
that's in the Shiver Peaks, technically.
That's not that's living story content.
Yeah,
that's-
it was.
Well, it's Icebrute Saga, yeah.
Yeah, so it was.
Yeah, that's a rough fight.
That's a lot harder than a lot of the other things on the Central
I-
Area boss train.
I did not die at any point during the fight, but man, that was
Nice.
some jumping. I got the achievements for jumping over things.
Necromancer.
So probably my favorite is Triple Trouble.
Triple
Either
Trouble
that
is a
or-
lot of fun.
Yeah.
Either that or Tecottle.
the ones
Tecottle
are
is
fun.
cool.
Yeah.
I like Tequaddle, but Tequaddle fails a lot.
Tecottle fails a lot less than it used to.
Okay.
It has never failed when I've done it. But then again, I am hopping on the train immediately after reset.
What's the one that everyone used to do every day because it gave you a mystic coin when mystic coins were worth something?
That's the ley line, which
People still do that, and
every
that requires
day.
a different event.
And I'm actually sitting here waiting for it to spawn in like 2 minutes. because mystic coins are still worth a gold.
Oh yeah, fair.
Mystic
that's still
coins
worth
are
your time.
still they're still the thing in my bank worth the most money. If you look at GW2 efficiency, the bulk of what it says I have for value is my mystic coin collection.
I think my ectos are worth more than my mystic coins at this point, but I have a lot of ectos. Actually, I don't know if ectos have plunged in price yet.
I don't think they've changed much. I
And
think
I
they're
just
still
have-
around 25 silver per.
And I have a ton of ectos.
The
I
most
think
valuable thing in my bank is apparently a gift of fortune.
That
mean,
doesn't
yes.
surprise me.
I mean, if you have one made just sitting in your bank, yes,
Yes.
by far.
I've been selling a lot of what is it? Kelp, I think.
Kale.
Kale, yeah.
Yeah, turtles eat kale, and there's a lot of baby turtles out there that need their kale.
Well, and there's a shocking amount of kale that you can harvest.
I mean, there's a little bit, nowhere near as much as there is of the other foods the turtles want.
Mm.
That's why kale is going for like 15 to 20 silver per, and carrots and lettuce are more like 5 silver per.
There are so many carrots.
There's carrots everywhere.
What are these turtles for? Are these your new pets?
These are the siege turtles, and people are getting their turtle eggs slowly. And one of the first things you got to do after you get your turtle egg is you got to feed that baby turtle that just hatched. And to feed that baby turtle, you need a whole lot of kale, carrots, lettuce, and strawberries, like 250 of each. And then once the turtle's a little older, you need to feed it fish. But everybody's fishing, so that's not a problem.
Playing through Elden Ring has given me a newfound respect for the turtle.
And people are still salty about the turtle meta, but
It's
I hope that
it's
lessens now that there's an alternate way to get a turtle.
Well, it hasn't gone live yet, but it should in a few days. I may end up getting my egg that way because that meta's rough.
Well, and from what I've heard, Triple Trouble was also real rough for a really long time until people learned how to do it.
Yeah, it was. That and Tecottle both were.
I mean, so was a lot of Dragon's Stand is still kind of rough, but it used to be real bad.
Dragon's Den succeeds more often than not, but yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, I think one of the things with this one is there's not a lot of opportunity to gain time in basically there's a timer on the prep phase and on moving down through the zone once the meta actually starts. There's a timer on that part of it, and then a separate timer on the boss itself. So there's no way to gain any time by doing better at the moving through the zone part. And
Dragon's Den is also structured that way.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just that your timer for the second half is 15 minutes, and that's enough.
Yeah, the timer here is 20, and the best I've done is made it through the final set of mini bosses and gotten back to the center platform for the final burn phase with 9 seconds left on the clock. Not enough. But one day, turtle egg, one way or another.
One of the things that's impressed me about running all these events is how generally chill everybody has been. And I get this is all stuff that's on Deep Farm, but it's been a friendly little community of people chattering away in map chat while waiting on the things to happen. And I've been terribly impressed by the amount of effort somebody will go to res somebody.
Oh yeah. I mean, hey, that's free XP.
Yeah.
I always thought it was really cool how this game allows people to self-select themselves as the leaders of zone meta with the commander tags, and the general yep, people are gonna follow them. The commander is taking the responsibility to lead a group, and you should follow your commander's orders. Because if everyone's at least going in the same direction, that's probably good enough.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, and some of the things are more complicated. Like, on Triple Trouble, there's 3 groups that all need to do something slightly different. The only one I've not done is Cobalt.
Is that the bomb running one?
That's the bomb running one, yeah.
Yeah.
So I need to get that one next so I can get its mastery and then the mastery for having done all 3.
I will say, if you have a skimmer, that one is way, way easier.
Yeah, because you can carry a gunpowder keg while on a skimmer.
You can carry. Can you not carry it on a raptor? Because
I mean,
on the
You
bomb
can,
the wall.
but a lot of some of the areas are over water.
Yeah.
Okay.
If your raptor falls in the water, then you're gonna drop a keg.
Okay. Yeah, because I know, like, on the Pirate Queen, you can raptor up if you're lucky and out of combat and run it back that way.
Yeah.
That one takes forever. Like, we were talking about that one a little bit before the podcast, but, like, that wall is easily twice as tough as it should be.
It is the strongest door in all of Tyria. It is the true boss of that event.
I don't know. Like, the thing that's, like, hooking me right now is all the different things I could be working towards. And I've kind of done a half-assed job at a lot of them.
Yep.
Because
Yeah,
I was working on the backpack for collecting the books, and then I got distracted, and I was working on the ascended sword that you can get from Heart of Thorns.
Cowled
And then I got killed by piranhas and got distracted.
So I highly recommend you finish that one, because it's fairly easy as far as ascended weapons go.
Yeah, that's one of the easiest ascended weapons to get, and you can convert it between 5 different weapons.
Yeah.
Like, nearly at will. You can only do it, I think, once per 24 hours, and you do have to pay some unbound magic, but it's worth it.
I have a bunch of unbound magic.
Yeah.
And by the time I finish, Living World 3, I'm sure I will have even more unbound magic.
You will.
I've also done a half-assed job of, like, trying to move that forward. I had severe internet problems early in the week, and I kept getting disconnected during a phased encounter thing, and it would reset me back to the start. So I gave up on that for a little bit. I've been doing kind of a half-assed job of map completion because I needed hearts to get books.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you ever decide to do one of the original set of legendaries, you'll need a gift to exploration for that. But yeah, that's been one of the things that's, like, kept me going in Guild Wars 2 is there's always some achievement I can be working on, some goal, and I generally have, like, 1 or 2 short-term goals and then some longer-term goals, like, which are usually legendaries.
Yeah, I have so much stuff in my
along.
watch list. Like, I'm real close to my Warclaw mount. And I'm certain at some point this week I'll finish grinding that out, and that in itself is going to greatly improve the World versus World experience.
I do appreciate, Bell, watching you slowly find the grinds that I've always thought you would really enjoy, because this game is lots of grinds all the way down.
Well, and I mean, I think the interesting thing for me is that, like, it kind of feels that literally anything I do is sort of useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
It's not amazingly lucrative most of the time, but just, like, running around a zone and picking up bags of loot is useful.
It's probably also getting you spirit shards, if nothing else.
Yeah, tons of spirit shards, and there's still a bunch of trade skills that I want to level, and it's replenishing the stockpiles of lower level mats.
Which in many cases are still valuable.
But yeah, like if it ever comes to a point where I don't need them anymore, they're still worth a ton of money. Like, I decided the other day, and I liquidated most of my cooking materials because I wasn't going to level that for a while, and
so that was valuable.
That was a fortune.
Insert standard gripe about silver doubloons here.
Are those the things that you can't get except for if you're low level?
Yes. They don't drop for high level players. They come out of bags of loot if you're like level 40-ish, I want to say. It's dumb.
Yeah, they are far more valuable than they should be for their tier. But
I look forward, Bell, to hearing about you unlocking the Griffin, Roller Beetle, and Skyscale.
Oh, I will absolutely do those. But, like, here's the problem, and this is a me thing, but like I don't want to do content out of order.
I understand.
So
Yep.
I am doing Living World 3. Like, I mean, this is a problem I've had with like Elder Scrolls Online, and why I will never get caught up in Elder Scrolls Online is I am doing the content in the order in which it was originally released and slowly chunking my way through it. And I'm in the middle of Somerset, I think is the last time I played. You know, so here I'm working on Living World 3, and I want to see Living World 3 because, you know, Heart of Thorns finally sold me that, hey, maybe this game has a good story.
Yep. And you're at the point in the story where it's getting better and better.
Yeah, you're basically at what I would describe as the FF14 post story.
Yeah.
Like the original right before Heavensward.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, and I greatly appreciate that the way that this game is highly distracting in that you can just like kind of go in a direction and stuff will find you instead of the other way around. Like it's really hard to move for very long without finding some event going on or some, condensed group of players doing something. And the Reaper really is like, I guess, the class I should have played all along because it kind of does exactly what I wanted to do, which is mostly be unkillable.
Yeah, I think we were chatting about this the other day, but like one of this habit that I've picked up in a bunch of games, and it's like it served me really well in MMOs. It served me well in like Baldur's Gate and like Pathfinder, even Elden Ring lately. Is just the very first thing I do is roll like somewhere between 2 and 5 characters and just do the intro to get a feel for them, like just to get a sense. And it's like it doesn't necessarily help with Guild Wars, but like having a few different characters and being able to be like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was, has been it has saved me so much frustration in games.
I mean, the only real problem that I kind of see with Guild Wars 2 is the elite specs drastically change what you can do with the class, and there's a pretty heavy buy-in that's expected to get those elite specs. Like, yes, you can chain run heroic points, but like you kind of need to have somebody that knows how to do that in the first place. So it's a great lift up scenario where if you've got a friend that's already engaged, they can help you through that. But like as a solo player, getting one of those elite specs unlocked feels like a daunting task.
That is how I felt the first time.
And almost every build anymore that is like in the meta has at least one of the elite specs in it.
Yeah, there's a few exceptions, but in general, the elite specs are the way to go. Happily, the Path of Fire and End of Dragons elite specs are a little easier to unlock to usefulness because you don't have to fully unlock them to be able to like make a complete line, which was the case with the initial set of elite specs.
Yeah, you need 90 total points to make them useful.
Yep.
You still need 250 to finish, but
well, one of the things that I would love to see is someone take on the mantle of like coming up with good starter specs, because most of the sites where you look for, spec related information are all high end meta specs.
Yeah, it's like the thing
Yep.
if somebody was going to do a speed run.
But like what I really want is a site that's devoted to babies first warrior or babies first guardian.
Here is a
So,
good spec for this
once
class
upon a
for someone
time-
that hasn't played the game before.
Right. Like here's a thing, like here's 5 specs for this class that only use the original talent trees and are completely doable straight out of the gate and will give you a good experience.
So I will say that the boost specs right now went from I don't know why anyone would ever play this to these are actually kind of okay.
Yeah. I mean, like
Somewhat.
I had that with Necro. Necro was completely fine. Like it was viable and it gave me enough of a feel of the class that even though it was nothing like the Reaper I would eventually turn it into, it was a perfectly enjoyable spec. Like it was fine. But if you've leveled the class, you're going to end up with a weird mishmash of gear by the time you hit 80,
Yes.
and no resemblance of a spec.
But you should, because like you've had like 30 levels in which to figure out what a spec looks like.
I would say
fully unlocked your class skills way before you actually get to 80 most of the time.
I would say, as someone who is not terribly tactically minded in general, like, it is really easy to end up with
That's fair.
some abilities that aren't necessarily a spec, and there's a wild difference between I threw some stuff together because it sounded cool and an actual viable spec.
Yeah, it
reminds me of the
one or
early
two-
days of WoW when you could absolutely build yourself into a quarter where you were useless.
Yeah, and one or two wrong choices can be enough to absolutely tank your spec. Like,
It's
there's-
recoverable, but
oh yeah, because there's no cost to changing your choices. But like, there are multiple cases where you basically you choose 3 lines and then on those lines there's 3 places where you choose one of 3 things, and there are many cases where choosing the wrong item on one of those 9 total choices can like reduce your damage output by over half.
right.
Like, but but on the bright side, once you realize that you need to make some changes and find some some information, like, you can fix it. Like, you just go in and you click a different choice. So there's that. You just
Yeah,
have
I mean, probably
to know that you need to make that change.
the hardest thing to fix is gearing.
Yes.
Because, I mean, that
Yes.
that is either luck into the right things dropping or
I mean, that's not going to
outlay
happen
of
for
cash.
you. So mostly it's
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't drop. The better, the like Marauder and stuff like that doesn't seem to ever drop.
Yeah, there are some ways to get gear that has those stats on it, like, apart from the free choice gear. Like, honestly, your best bet there is to do something from which you can get gear that lets you choose a prefix.
Yep.
And nearly every prefix can be chosen at this point. Like, I think everything except for the 2 new ones for Into Dragons you can choose
probably
on most gear.
I would say probably the easiest set of that is what the bladed set out of Heart of Thorns.
Yep.
Yeah.
and that is why I'm inverted brink right now.
Yeah, bladed gear is a very easy way to do that. Or if you do World v World, you can stock up Warlord's armor boxes, but that's something that you can only get, I think, maybe 2 of those a week, maybe only 1 of those a week.
Like that, yeah.
So that's more of something that, like, you can be building up to have to use on a second or third character.
Well, and it seems to be pretty easy to get into a yellow set, and then from there you can kind of build into an orange set and then eventually into an ascended set.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would recommend getting into a yellow set
No.
intentionally at this point.
I'd go straight to exotic if at all possible. And ascended's cool, but you don't have to have it. That's one of the nice things about that is, like,
Ascended gear is mostly only necessary for fractals.
Yes, because you need the agony resistance that you can only put on that. But as far as the stats from exotic is good enough to do anything in the game.
Do raids not require ascended?
Absolutely not.
Interesting.
Well, to do or to get into a raid group.
I mean, depending on the raid group, yeah, some, like, they may be, but no, you don't actually need ascended stats to raid.
If we could ever gather enough people, I think it would be fun to try some strikes.
We're getting close and to have enough, like, bodies. We just need to get everybody far enough into stuff to
Associated
be able to do
stories.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, the strikes start to happen in what?
Into Icebrood.
Icebrood? Yeah.
Yeah, because the very first one is the
Raven
Steel
thing.
Battalion, Steel Warband.
I thought the Raven thing was before that.
Maybe. Yeah, I guess Pure March is before that. So yeah, actually, no, the very first one would be the
Gold Skinner.
the thing in the mountains.
Oh, right.
Between Grothmar and Bura. So yeah, but yeah, so if
I
we
tend to
could
kind of forget about that one.
If we could get people into Icebrood, we could do some. And then there's new ones in End of Dragons that at some point I need to try. And the ones in End of Dragons appear to work very similar to like Final Fantasy XIV expert trials. Like, there is a story instance with a big fight, and then once you've done the story version of that fight, the strike is unlocked, and that is a more complicated version of that fight, meant for a 10-man group.
Yeah, when I was doing Drakkar, I definitely felt shades of Final Fantasy rating.
Yeah, you can definitely see how the slightly more complicated fights, the mechanics that you need to deal with have like grown and been been improved over the years.
It's more than just put out a bunch of damage and a big AoE every so often.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I'm digging is that, like, because there's no upwards pressure on gear, you can kind of, like, it doesn't feel bad that you're progressing slowly because, like, you're progressing into maybe the last set of gear you ever have.
Mm-hmm.
I have gear that I put together back in like 2016 that's still completely valid and relevant.
I was going to say, none of my gear from the first time I played this game is relevant, but from the second time, absolutely.
Yeah, like basically once you've got access to Heart of Thorns prefixes, like those are still good.
I mean, on a basic level, Berserker is still good for a lot of things.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, Berserkers and Vipers are,
Although Dragons is starting to replace Berserkers in even a lot of serious content, which is interesting to me.
Dragons does seem very good.
I think the thing that I find interesting is, like, it's also kind of scratching a Diablo itch for me.
Oh.
Which the games are totally different, but the way in which I engage with them is similar.
I can see that.
Because, like, Diablo, I did a lot of things like Greater Rifts and Nephilim Rifts, chasing loot, but, like, in a non-specific way. Because, like, you can't really targeted farm anything in Diablo, so you just have to do stuff. And maybe stuff will drop. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm doing stuff. And then I've got a lot of long-tailed goals that are either achievements that I know will get me something cool, or, working towards mastery points or hero points or, something like that. And, like, I never had any desire to play alts, but, like, I've also been spending a little bit of time on my Guardian and my Ranger. I have a viable build on my Guardian, and I need to sort out what I want for my Ranger. I think I like Longbow the best.
Longbow is,
My favorite Ranger weapon is Shortbow, but
Longbow
I'm apparently
seems
weird for having that opinion.
Longbow seems really good for events.
Oh,
like,
absolutely, yes, that.
It has the kit that you want for events.
For a little while, I was playing Druid Ranger in events because staff is contribution for no effort.
And, like, this may fade into the next topic, but one of the things that I really dig about Guild Wars 2 so far is there's multiple paths to get to any objective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe not to a specifically named item, but there is an equivalent item that you can get from a lot of different paths. So if you are a hardcore crafter, you can go craft your way to glory. If you want to do just a bunch of achievements, you can get a lot of really good pieces of gear just through achievements. If you want to raid, you can raid. If you want to just do strikes, you can do strikes. There's an entire progression system within PvP, either the actual PvP system or the World v World system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they all end up dumping off at basically the same space. Like, I like the fact that, like, Epic is more prestigious and you can do cool stuff with it, but, like, it's essentially the same as Ascended.
And there's Legendary, you mean?
Legendary, yeah. It's purple.
There's some convenience
I think of it as
with
Epic.
Legendary stuff, but, like,
yeah, the benefit of Legendary is once you have a Legendary version of something, you never need another one of that thing ever again.
Yeah, you can make it be whatever you
want. That's definitely true.
The benefit of the Legendary is it is super shiny and goes pew 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 and has custom particle effects.
That too.
I mean, really, the being able to change your spec gear-wise on the fly is the thing that sounds most useful for me.
This is fair, but boy, like, you're like, how many Ascended weapons could I make for the resources I'm putting into this Legendary? And then it stops sounding quite so useful.
Oh yeah, like I mean, I did some calculations of what it would take for me to chase like one of the legendary great swords, and I just crafted an ascended great sword. I had already pushed my warrior up to 500 weaponsmithing back when I was playing in 2017. So like I had the ability to just knock out a weapon. So I did that thing.
I mean, a legendary weapon's a lot cheaper than it used to be.
Farewell, Mystic Coins.
Okay, so speaking of the Mystic Toilet, I swear that it used to be that if you put in nothing but hammers, you would get a random hammer out.
Yeah,
That is still true.
that's still true.
I bought a bunch of hammers and I got a spear gun out of it.
Sure you didn't buy a mace for one of them?
No, they were all exactly the same item.
Oh.
So like I know it was exactly the same item.
Yeah, because that's
So I'm
it's,
like-
supposed, it's supposed
No,
to
it's
be like however specific the stuff you put in is, that's how specific what you get out will be.
Okay.
that said, I never, ever, ever put gear into the Mystic Toilet unless it's a Mystic Toilet day.
It was a Mystic Toilet day.
I tend to save up exotic weapons and throw them in just to gamble for a precursor because whatever. Why not?
Sure. That makes sense.
I've never
I
gotten
am-
one, but you know.
I am also
One
starting
day.
to do this thing, but yeah, like I'm rat holing exotics for that purpose. But it was a Mystic toilet day, and I was like, okay, screw it. We'll try for a precursor, and bought several of the cheapest thing I could find.
I wonder if some of the new stuff isn't configured correctly, because I noticed some of the cheap stuff I was seeing was brand new items.
Yeah.
And it might have
could be.
been. It was not an item I recognized. I thought maybe they had just changed it to where you couldn't game the system towards a specific type of item returning.
Yep, I think specifically if you want to gamble for like the hammer precursor, then the way it should work is as long as what you're putting in is all level 76 or higher exotic hammers, you'll have a shot at it.
Okay.
I've said this a few times. If you want the hammer precursor, just
Just
buy it.
I know. That's the wisdom you have told me before.
It's true.
Like, there are some precursors that can only be crafted, and a few precursors that I think are still worth crafting because the base item is too crazy expensive,
Hmm.
which I want to say is probably just the great swords.
Yeah, those are the main ones.
Yeah, that was what I was looking at potentially crafting, was one of the great swords, and those are ungodly expensive.
Yes.
I found the one-handed sword and the staff to not be too terrible.
You got the sword to drop.
It's true. I did get the sword to drop.
Yeah.
I may
But I
look
think you
at the
crafted the
staff.
staff, right?
I did craft the staff.
I would like to have an ascended or better staff, but I have not gone down that rabbit hole.
So you're
I have some news for you.
What?
You are interested in legendary crafting, you say?
I've already done the things to unlock it for weaponsmithing, but unfortunately, staff isn't weaponsmithing, is it?
Yeah, staff is artificing. But if you want an ascended staff, you're probably going to have to work your well, I guess there's a few other ways to do it. But one of the ways is to craft the legendary precursor from Heart of Thorns, which must be
That's
crafted if you want the legendary associated with it, and is ascended.
the other option would be to take a ranger and get the staff from the specialization collection for druid.
That is what I did.
Okay. Yeah.
Or a thief.
Yeah, or thief.
Possibly and a thief. I've done both.
I mean,
I
I'm
also like
kind of
both.
working towards the Reaper ascended that way too, but like I'm not making serious progress on it.
Those are so once you clear some of the hurdles, because there are some mastery-based hurdles you have to clear. Once you've done it once, it's very easy to repeat those.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to say I'm pretty close to maybe, is it the Warrior Torch?
Possibly. Yeah. I mean
Yeah.
that is the Heart of the Thorns ascended for warrior, yes.
Yeah, I think I'm close to the Warrior Torch.
But yeah,
But yeah,
like,
I mean-
that's a good way to get ascended weapons is the various specialization collections.
This game is a goal machine. There's
Yup.
just so many
Yup.
goals within goals within goals.
Which is why I understand the complaint of it feeling grindy, because some of these things are very long. They're intended to give you some long-term goals.
Hmm.
For me, the thing is like there's enough moment to moment loot drop to, light up the endorphins in my brain that tell me I'm getting something.
There's too much moment to moment loot drop.
I mean, I have paid some money and have things to take care of that in the field, and I'm okay.
I have so much bag problem.
Now
Like
that unidentified loot exists, I mostly don't have bad problems.
honestly, the problem that I end up with instead is I have junk that is because I can get rid of everything but the chunk out in the field. And I guess I could throw it away, but like that stuff adds up. So
I mean, you can always bounce to the guild hall and sell it,
well, or
and
I
then
can
bounce
Mistlock.
back
I
back
can
where you were.
I
Or
can bounce
Mistlock.
back to Mistlock, which is usually what I do.
Because Mistlock also has a return to exactly where you were function.
Yes. I did not realize that all of them don't do that. And that there's only two of them that do that. Because like I ported it over to Lily of the Elon or whatever,
Mhm.
and was shocked that there was not a way to get back to where I was at. Like Mistlock was the first one I encountered, so I just thought they all worked that way. So we've had this topic on the list for an exceptionally long time about catering to the minority of.
I'm pretty sure this topic exists because of 40K, but it has
Yeah.
other applications.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
there's just, it was something that a while back I was just thinking about, because there's this interesting thing. So the thing that got me thinking about it, honestly, was once upon a time we played bad Magic,
and it was
and
amazing.
and it wasn't bad Magic. It was Magic. It was the game we played because you played with the cards you got from cracking packs, and
Yeah.
that was just the cards you had.
And you had a limited amount of money to buy the packs, so you just played with whatever the hell you had.
Yep.
Yeah, it was this sort of like making the best of what you had. And it's been interesting to watch how much the competitive scene has warped the way that is played.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
you just like there are absolutely people who will tell you the worst thing you can do in Magic is to crack packs.
Yes, that you were ruining the game by cracking packs.
I mean,
Or you're just wasting your money. It's like, oh no. Don't open those. Take them to a draft event. That's where the real value is. Because you gotta have packs to get into a draft event, or whatever the case may
yeah,
be.
you want the value from being able to play with those packs. Those packs are a game in themselves. I am this person.
Yeah.
And there's a corollary there to games like 40K, where if you have somebody who's planning on who's like thinking about getting into 40K, some of the first advice that anybody who's like there's a significant contingent of that community whose advice will be, don't buy any models first. Do a bunch of research before you buy anything.
Right.
Don't go to the store and be like, hey, that's cool, I want that. Because you might be wrong. It might be terrible. Don't do that.
Well, and the thing is that's counter to how most everyone I knew got into the Warhammer 40K.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Definitely not how I got into Warhammer.
They bought the cool models, the ones that
Yeah.
interested them, and then made them work. And like, sure, like you sometimes built a horrible army, but like everyone else had a kind of horrible army too.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I distinctly, and this is going to be, I'm going to date myself here, but I distinctly remember watching watching my local Magic and later local minis community react to the existence of the internet.
Yep.
Because
Net decking,
somebody
man.
somewhere out there is playing way harder than you or anyone you know.
Net decking ruined Magic for me.
Yep.
Like straight up, because like and the thing is I was active in a card shop when that became real popular, and it all started with people chasing the decks that won world championships,
Yeah.
like trying to create their own version of it. And like I remember this happening, and before long the only decks that were in play were like the same 5 decks.
Yeah.
Nobody was creating their own version of them. They were just they went on to some Usenet message board, found the deck list posted, and that was their deck.
And you see the same kind of thing in like builds in games where it's like you don't
Mhm.
it often feels like there's no space to actually do your own brewing unless you're already an incredibly high tier player. Like that whole aspect of the game is just not open to you unless you are already a highly skilled competitive player. And the takeaway that I find really interesting about that is actually competitive players are a pretty small minority of almost any game.
Well,
I would definitely say yeah. Like I mean,
what do you mean by competitive?
People who are saying I want to put I want to put effort into learning to win. Like honestly, my motivation is winning. I
Okay.
want to put effort into learning to win. That is a small minority of players. It is I mean almost anytime you put the data together for almost any game, it's a thing that you see in game dev where people are like, I'm it's related but not quite, but I remember the Pathfinder dev, Wrath of the Righteous dev, or Baldur's Gate 3, I forget which, but they were like, we made this character creator that gives you all of these options that you can do all of these things and min-max your character, and everybody is just playing a human fighter. We thought our data was broken because everybody is just doing this thing.
It was Baldur's Gate.
Baldur's Gate, yeah. But it's like, those are your players. Those are the people, those are the vast majority of people playing your game. Like, they just want to do stuff and have fun.
I mean, to be honest, I would say the average player only wants to play good enough to not get chastised by the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just good enough to not stand out.
Yeah, I want to be good enough to not get mocked. And that floor for good enough to not get mocked is so much higher than it used to be.
Yeah.
You even see it with like FF14, where once upon a time you could go into a random group and mostly people were just going to be super chill. Like, I don't know, it was never a problem. But like now I don't actually even like to random queue in dungeons anymore, especially not in expert roulette. Are you kidding me? Somebody's going to pull wall to wall in a dungeon that I barely know. And as a result, I don't want to run the dungeon enough to know it well enough. Like it's a self-defeating cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. And it's interesting to me how warping that minority top end is to the game and the field itself.
I was about to say, are devs actually catering to the minority, or is the minority warping the game space around them, whether like the devs are doing anything about it or not?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's so much who's catering to whom.
Yeah,
it's more like from a design from like a dev standpoint, like what do you do in that space? Do you it's the PvP thing. Like I see MMOs put PvP in their game repeatedly, like it's like there's some reason that's a good idea when every piece of data you could find tells you otherwise.
but I mean, we've already talked about how this is also bled into PvE as well. It's almost like any time players are interacting with each other, there's this like consolidation towards competitiveness.
Yeah, but it ends up being the 0.01% of the most hardcore set the terms for the rest of the players.
Yeah, but how do you stop that?
I don't know.
Because
I
it basically
don't
becomes.
know if I don't know how you solve that problem.
Yeah, because it basically becomes the hardcore players saying, if you're not being as hardcore as I am, you are wasting my time.
Well, I think it's not even necessarily that, but it's also probably a lot of people like again, because of the internet, we are socializing out all of this information, and so people are seeing like basically net decking tactics and like, oh, I can wall to wall pull this, so we're going to wall to wall pull this cuz I know how to do this. And like that just becomes the expectation because they probably watch somebody else wall to wall pull, or like they got randomed into a group that was doing wall-to-wall pull, and like, oh, I'm gonna do a wall-to-wall pull then.
Okay, but as a tank, I will tell you, tanks don't start out wall-to-wall pulling.
Sure.
They wall-to-wall pull because if I am not pulling at a fast enough speed, I may get kicked from the group, or someone's just going to pull it for me and it's a bigger mess.
I imagine some tanks are going to be starting off wall-to-wall pulling, but not everyone.
Yeah,
But it only takes-
But I'm saying even if I don't, that's what I get.
But yeah,
it only
I get
takes
that.
one person in a group of 4 to make all 4 of them wall-to-wall pull.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a microcosm of the overall thing. The minority of like highly competitive players warp the field for everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still like, I understand how that is a challenge. And like there are ways that you can try and do this by trying to find like queues that are less competitive, or like trying to, I mean, honestly, doing matchmaking to try and find people who are not playing the game at that similar level.
But I will tell you, having experienced this from Destiny, they used to do something called skill-based matchmaking, and they switched over to something called connection-based matchmaking. When they did skill-based matchmaking, they had nothing but complaints by the hardcore players because they don't want to have sweaty matches every single time.
Oh, well, that's where, okay, so
I mean,
that complaint is absolutely the devs catering to the competitive.
Yeah.
And that is weak. That is,
But that's going to happen because it's happened before.
I mean,
and it's not just
it doesn't
Destiny. I've
have
seen
to
it in other
happen.
games.
League of Legends Smurf accounts are one of my favorite examples.
Sure.
Like it's too hard for me to win all the time in platinum. I'm gonna level up a character and just smash people in bronze.
Because part of what the hardcore want is, because they are hardcore, they should be able to stomp on the less hardcore.
Yeah, and
that's part of the benefit of being so hardcore.
Well,
I feel like
I think that there's also a slightly more charitable read is if what you're indexing on is your ability to win, then any time you are not winning is challenging your stake in the game.
Yes.
And if you are competitive and tuned towards figuring out how to win, you are going to optimize to reduce the risk of you not winning.
So I will say, as somebody who is a little bit more competitive, there are also playing against other competitive players is also my best opportunities to learn, which is something I also value. And I think there's a healthy competitive mindset, which is all I want to do is win all the time. And there's another form of competitive mindset, which is I want to attain mastery in this. And like, even if you are losing but learning, that is also valuable.
I feel like you're also kind of in the minority of the mindset of a lot of these the competitive gamers that I've encountered. Because like, okay, going back to LNR experience, Zaya was super competitive, like hyper competitive, but also did not care to lord that competitive nature over anybody else. Like he just wanted to do his own thing and figure out weird specs that let him do things that nobody else could do, and was always trying to push himself and learn, but like that's not the type of player that I've encountered a lot of.
You've encountered killers.
I've encountered gankers. I've encountered gankers.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like, I think there are people, and this is where it's hard for me because I think we're talking about a couple of different things. Like in Magic, there are definitely people who are trying to learn how to play certain things at a high level of skill play, and like they want to play the best deck and learn how to play it against the other best decks. And there's just people who want to like make sure they are playing the best deck against the weakest deck so they always win.
Yeah, I mean, the Magic situation is slightly different because what ends up happening is the level of play gets pushed to where if you don't want to just get rolled all the time, you have to play competitive.
Yeah, and what is pushing that level of, and that's the interesting thing is how is that level of competitiveness getting pushed? Because like if it is
the highest skill player in any group dictates the minimum skill floor.
So
Yep.
how are you forming those groups, right?
It does, yeah, almost any way you form the group, the highest skill player in a given group is almost always going to set the floor.
Well, and this is where I like we were talking about how Destiny at one point had skill-based matchmaking versus connection-based matchmaking. Like that's one way you can combat this is by making sure that like you keep a narrower band of competitiveness in group formation.
But that reduces the number of people available at any particular.
Right. So they complain
level.
that they have to work harder, and then they also complain that the matches are laggy, and they complain that the queue times are longer.
Yep. Because there's only so many people that want to play at that level. A lot of us
Yeah.
just want to play and have fun and not do hours and hours of homework outside the game to be able to play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. Like, okay, say I am playing a character, and if I put in 20% more effort, I will do 10% more damage. I'm never going to do that. I'm going to be fine with doing 10% less damage if I can do 20% less effort to do it. Like, that's just me. Like, I will never, I don't care about the numbers. Like, I only care about the numbers if the numbers are making us lose.
Yeah, like I'm an optimizer in the sense that I optimize ROI.
Yeah.
I'd like, boy, I will go to some lengths to optimize ROI. Don't get me wrong, but getting the biggest possible number, nah, it's way past the ROI curve. But it was interesting. Like, and part of the thought for me is like when we get into the catering part, like I agree that there is a healthy I'm looking to learn to get better mindset. And it's also the mindset that is most frequently cited because it's the healthy one by everybody wanting more of that. And I wonder how much that's worth preserving as a minority of a minority for the health of a given game.
Well, my concern is a little bit more systemic, which is okay, so you want to reduce this. Like, how do you do this in a like in the example of Final Fantasy 14? How do you prevent people from pushing it to do wall-to-wall pulls?
I mean,
You change the layout of the zones, and that's what they've done over the
That's what they
years.
did.
Yeah,
The simplest
dungeon
version
design.
is wall to wall is one pull.
Yeah,
Which
like I
they
don't
have
know if
done
you've
a few times.
right.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed this, but like most dungeons, it is impossible to pull more than 2 packs at a time.
Yeah, the newer stuff is definitely designed like that.
Yeah.
So like from a design standpoint, they're trying to do whatever they can to lower the temperature and reduce that stress. But like now you better be able to do 2 packs at a time.
The other thing is also reducing the variance between what is the skill gap and reduce that skill gap. Like a super unskilled player versus a super skilled player. What is the variance between those two players? You make that small and it doesn't matter that much.
I mean, Final Fantasy 14 is an interesting one where I like again, I kind of can get frustrated with it because I have not installed the not allowed to be installed mods that tell me how well I'm doing. So I actually never know how well I'm doing.
But see,
I
I think
can
that's
tell you-
wonderful.
I don't have that installed, but I know you push your buttons on GCD.
Yeah.
So you're probably above average.
Yeah.
Like I will tell you, like back when I was raiding, the best thing I ever did for my mental health in World of Warcraft was uninstall a DPS mod. Like I don't care. I don't care what the numbers look like. Like I will do my level best and I will try at the fights. And if somebody tells me there's an issue, there's an issue. But I don't want to know. Like I don't care. Like
Yeah,
it was stressing me out trying to watch where my position on that list was.
I will say that this is totally fine up until the point that you include an enraged timer that is even remotely tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Because-
like enraged timers aren't as tight as they used to be.
That is a reasonable thing to say. I don't actually know. I haven't done any competitive content in this game in a while, but like that is probably the worst possible feeling to get killed by a boss and have basically no input as to why did I die. Like if you can be like, oh, at some point this person died and that probably took down some of our like DPS time. But we had some fights where nobody died, everyone was up the whole time, and we still wiped to the enrage, and it's like, oh, we just need to be like 10% better, but we have no idea like how we're doing. Like where is like their opportunity to be gained here?
Yeah, I mean, and I would position that kind of thing as that is the at some level catering to the competitive side.
Sure, because that's the thing that pushes you to install a DPS mod so that you know, hey, am I being competitive on DPS?
Yeah. Or the thing that makes you start tracking your KDA, or, running probabilities on, whatever it is that whatever random element is in the game that you're playing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And you know what? If we ever get up to like tier 4 fractals in Guild Wars 2, then maybe at that point I'll start caring that much. But until then, apparently what I'm putting out is just fine. So
But yeah,
happy with that.
But it is an interesting problem, and what ends up happening a lot of the time is that hyper-competitive community ends up being the most vocal people in the microcosm of game communities.
well, they're probably the most invested in that game, right?
I almost certainly very, very rarely, in fact.
Like your most dedicated players are a lot of times
ones that look pretty.
Well, or the ones that just like what a fish. Like it is
most
shocking how many like trade skillers that just log in or play the market or
one of my favorite pieces of data from I think it was the huge EverQuest 2 dump from a while back, but has been reinforced with a bunch of other data from other games. Players who spend the most time in the game and spend the most money in the game log in, go somewhere, take screenshots of themselves, and log out. They're the selfie people. They're by far the most dedicated people in a given game. Are your selfie stick people.
So I will say, one of the things that I was kind of thinking about is not necessarily MMOs, which is what we are talking about, to be clear. But like, if I look at a game that I play a lot, like Celeste, it is the most engaged people in the Celeste community are the most competitive people.
I think that's true of. I think that's going to naturally be true of any game that has a start to finish, because people are going to play it and finish it and then play a different game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that I think that it is possible and something of a fallacy on the game design side to look at that and say, okay, those are the less engaged people. We don't need to pay as much attention to them because whatever, they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
We should pay attention to these most engaged people.
Yeah, whereas the most engaged people are making their own content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a continuing debate. I don't know if it's a debate, but argument within like the Star Citizen community about the role of PvP in the game and what it should be, and the dawning realization that there are far more people who are far healthier for the game in terms of whatever KPIs you'd like to measure that have no interest in PvP.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you also have stuff like it's not even just PvP. You also have stuff like your super hardcore market board people absolutely warp your game's economy, and that's an interesting one as well.
Yep.
Well, I mean, we've just gone through this cycle with New World where they have absolutely tried to cater towards making the game harder, making the game more challenging and exclusive and more PvP oriented, and it is killing the game. Like, it has driven off any of the players that kind of sort of enjoy the game from a casual standpoint. And like right now the average players over the last 30 days is down to 25,000 from just under 1 million at launch.
Ouch.
Like, it's just the game is slowly dying because they are narrowing it down to fewer and fewer players that still care. And on that one, that all started with a single patch trying to make the content harder.
Yeah. And there, if that's such a weird one because it was the PvE that they made harder,
Yep.
and therefore you couldn't get
Mhm.
attached into it.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Like, I mean, there was a very limited amount of content in the game, and there still is. They've not added any more content. They just decided to make it harder to make it less accessible, which, I mean, is a panic move to throttle it, to slow players down.
which we've seen a few times now.
Right. Yeah, that's not a new play, but it also just made the game unfun. Like why should we care enough if it's not really fun to do it in the first place? And there was a community that had sprung up about doing weird runs for gear, and that was just kind of killed overnight. So I don't like it's a challenge. Like your most vocal players are going to be the ones that are the most serious in quotes, but the more you seem to focus on them, the more general players you're losing in the process.
Yeah, there was an interesting like conversation that I saw on Star Citizen where somebody was like, "Look, I'm a veteran Air Force pilot. I play sims all the time. If I were making a game that catered to me, I would make all of these changes and it would be way more hardcore, but the devs shouldn't do that. Like, yes, I am one of the most dedicated people to this in this game, and the devs should not listen to me." And it was like, there's an interesting take.
I do keep coming back to the question of magic, and like I don't know how you keep competitive players out of that game without just being like, well, if you've won this many games of like we're just gonna ban you because you've won too much.
Well, I mean,
Like,
I think what you have to do is you have to invent jank.
Yeah.
So like one thing that we did local is we started a deck builders box league where you go out and buy one of the $20 magic deck builders boxes, which give
Mhm.
you, I don't remember how many packs of cards. I think 4 packs of cards and assortment of just basic general stuff. And they come in a bunch of different variants. They're all roughly the same price. So like if you happen to like, the newer Ravnica sets, you could buy one of those, or if you liked a different era of Magic, you could buy one of those and then build a deck from the box, and that's all you have access to.
I have seen these types of things with like sealed leagues where like you get 6 packs to build your deck to start, and each week you add a pack to it.
Yeah.
And that feels kind of similar to what you're talking about. But
Yeah, I
like
mean,
I think
that's
it's
just
super telling to me that the biggest uptick that Magic has seen in a decade has been when it formally embraced Commander, which specifically designs counter to established understanding about good deck building and is a expressly casual format, like is intended as an expressly casual format. And like I think the most recent thing is that it might be the most popular way to play Magic now. I don't know if that's true.
Has been for some time.
Yeah, like, and it is a format that is specifically designed to fly in the face of all established here is how you Magic rules. And I think that's, I mean, MMOs do a broadly similar thing in that you can play in the PvP space, or you can play the auction house, or you can go fishing or take screenshots. Like, it's just different formats for the same game that can then appeal to a bunch of different people. You sort of broaden your audience by creating different formats, and then you make a new format. If you look at games like Infinity or more recently 40K, once a meta is established, they intentionally break it, either with new tournament rules, like new scenarios that you're playing that emphasize different things, or changes to the way certain pieces play, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I definitely appreciate Commander, although Commander is kind of constantly going through a conversation about levels of competitive.
Mhm.
But that's a conversation you need to have every time you basically sit down at a commander table.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's and I think that's that's actually one of the strengths of Commander is that it forces that conversation in a way that like Sealed doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in
I-
Commander, if you've got one hyper competitive player and 3 non competitive players, the 3 non competitive players can gang up on the hyper competitive player.
It's true, but I would also say that it's not necessarily one of the things that I know is a conversation happening right now is like how do we judge competitiveness, because like there's a lot of people who say their decks are a 7 when they're popping off and comboing out on turn 3, and it's like everyone has a different rubric for grading how competitive they are, especially if they're sitting down at a table with strangers, because they all are coming from different local play groups that are all different levels of competitive, which does make figuring out how competitive you are a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. There are definitely games that if you look at 40K, for example, there is a fairly strong there's a fairly strong community driven like ELO thing where you put your lists and your player profile into a thing every time you play a game with somebody, and it's surprisingly widely adopted where it's just like, yeah, this helps us understand, is this even going to be a useful game for us? Like, oh, you're playing this tournament list or this variant of a tournament list and you've won the last 37 tournaments in this area. Like, no, my starter box battle is not going to be meaningful for either of us. It's just going to be frustration. It's kind of like taking the net decking thing and turning it around into something that makes it more approachable. And I don't know how well it works because there are games that I just don't play with people I don't know.
Well, and I
Yeah.
would say, like, one of the challenges right now is in Magic that Wizards is putting out so freaking much product that it's not even that people are net decking to stay or to be competitive. They're just net decking because they don't have time to play enough of a given format before the format rotates.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I would really enjoy sealed or probably not draft, but at least sealed Magic. But like, I don't have time or interest to do all of the research necessary to know about everything. Like if it was a sealed thing where everybody was going in 100% blind and nobody had any idea what any of the cards were, I'd probably do that actually.
Yeah, that would be really fun. But the problem is you've got basically an upfront cost of either you need to do tons of research or you need to just spend money until you get better. Yeah, because like sealed costs, like it has a cost associated with it.
Or alternatively, both.
Yeah, both.
Because like I had to spend a decent amount of money getting good at limited Magic. And then I also, whenever a set comes out, if I want to be really competitive, I need to do the upfront research to know all of the cards in the set.
But that also kind of ruins the experience. Because like I don't want to do research. I just want to sit down and play some cards. But also not have it be an experience where I am so hopelessly out of my league that it can't be fun at all.
Like so much of what I enjoyed about Magic back when it was new, when I played it in high school, was being surprised by the cool cards that I pulled out of the packs, figuring out how to use those cards in my deck and put something together and build something. And there's just no room for any of that in modern Magic. There's no room to be surprised by cards. There's no room to figure out for yourself what the cards do or how they work. And I don't know.
Well, and it wasn't just surprise from pulling cards. It was surprised from sitting down at a table and seeing something you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And like picking it up and having to pull it across the table so you can read it to like I've never fought against a raging river. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, that can be so sealed is the best format for that because you do get to at least see all of the cards in your pool before you make any decision about what goes into a deck. And that is the format that pre-releases are, and that is why pre-releases are the best way to play Magic, at least in a limited perspective.
Yeah, I think the problem for me is that you've already described a level of buy-in that is required of me up front
Mhm.
that I'm just not necessarily willing to throw out there. Like, I just want to buy a deck and play some, and that option just doesn't exist other than in really limited cases where you happen to be able to find a handful of people who are willing to play in the same manner.
Yep.
This is another reason why Commander is becoming the most popular format. It's the format they make precons for.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and you can sit down and play. Like, I have done this several times where I have a couple of people that I have played Commander precons with, and they're great. Like, it's a balanced deck. It feels fine. Like,
Everybody's playing the same thing. Everybody
Yep.
loads up the deck. Maybe you don't even flip through it first. You just like, let's see what happens.
I'm sure every deck will be of the same level as a Traxxer, right?
They've done better about that in recent years.
I mean, and like all game development, it's a learning process.
Yes.
I mean, I have a box with 6 of the Card Kingdom, whatever they call them, their little pre-built
The
decks.
weird battle
Yeah.
deck things.
The battle decks thing, yeah. Like, I've got a box with 6 of those, and they're all fairly balanced. And I've played games where like we roll the dice and figure out which of the 6 decks we're gonna play, and then play against it, and like that's fun to me.
Actually, did you ever play Jumpstart?
No, but like I like the concept of Jumpstart.
I also like the
Jumpstart
concept of
wasn't in
Jumpstart.
stock anywhere.
Yeah, they put too many good cards in those packs, as it turns out.
Everyone was chasing that one Elvish deck, I think. But yeah, it was bought out everywhere here, so it wasn't an option for any casual play.
I do not have Jumpstart, but I have the deck. I have the set that was very clearly the test bed for Jumpstart. Unsanctioned.
Mm-hmm.
I love the concept of Jumpstart, and I also like the concept of, what was it, Keystone?
Keyforge.
Keyforge, yeah, Keyforge, where you're given a semi-randomized deck that's actually a playable randomized deck, unlike these quote-unquote starter decks of old. And like, I
That
can
gave
remember
me a really bad Mr. Suitcase problem.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, the problem with starter decks of old is like when we first got into Magic, we tried to play 2 starter decks against
Ooh.
each other.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know any better.
I mean, they were starter decks.
So
We're
therefore,
supposed
right?
to, you know,
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I mean,
you
it,
buy
it
a
was
starter deck.
it
and
was
it's enough
specifically
cards.
called the starter deck, and we just played the cards that it came in, and like, I can't figure out how to make any of this work.
I mean, I did reasonably well because my starter deck had a Sol Ring in it, but
Ooh,
Yeah,
that'd be pretty
Yeah, I had a
powerful.
Sol Ring and a dual land. And that was real good.
but that like this was at a time when more than 2 colors in your deck was a pretty bad idea.
It was a
in
terrible
Magic.
idea.
But I also
And-
remember, like, back in the day, we would have like 150 card decks, like outrageously large decks.
Yeah.
Well, because you didn't have a competitive meta telling you what the correct number of cards in your deck was.
Right. Like, the first tournament I went in was up against a bunch of people with like everything from like 60 card decks to 200 card decks. We were just winging it. Like, a power 9 swept the entire place, but like until then it was fun. I mean, like, I had a deck that was built around a card from the dark that was green that would steal artifacts. I don't remember what the name of it was. And I would steal artifacts and then use them. And that was it. Like, it was all about getting those cards into play. Like, and it was like a black-green deck, and I had, I think it was Elves of Deep Shadow, which was basically the green elf that would give you black mana.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, the problem is like, I lament this, but also like I'm afraid that it's just a bygone era.
Oh, it is.
Of
Absolutely.
less communication.
Yeah,
Not
I
just
mean,
that, but also that
The mindset.
that development, like Magic is not developed remotely the way it was back then either. So yeah, like the mindset on both the players and the developers is completely different from what it was.
I mean, I
that game
understand.
doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, I do feel like the communication update is a pretty big deal. And like, maybe this is why Jim Crawford is constantly trying to harken back to a pre-internet day when he could have secrets in his video games.
Yeah. I mean, everything is spoiled the day it comes out. It's kind of a problem now.
I mean, he has made it his entire mission to have video games be secrets and has mostly failed. I'm pretty sure everyone figured out how to play Frog Fractions 2 that wanted to know.
I'm pretty sure people figured that one out real quick.
I don't know. It is almost a loss of innocence,
We are able to know everything.
And thus,
and thus are burdened by that knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think about like elements of my childhood and youth that just like that can't happen like that anymore because we have the internet. Like
Yep.
trying to decide like who wrote this song, who's singing here, like what are the actual lyrics for this song.
Right.
Or
There are
like-
great debates that are easily solved with a Google query.
Who was the actor in that one episode of that old TV show? Was that did that episode even exist? Am I making that up? Like,
How do you
Google
get
knows
the
all.
Triforce in
Yeah.
Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time?
like it's all on the internet.
Anyway, I think we have recorded a show. Any final thoughts?
I like turtles. I would like to have one.
Dog.
I like turtles.
Turtles are either dog or god.
I do want a blasty turtle. I ran the cannons of the blasty turtle
Yeah.
on Triple Trouble.
Somebody had theirs out. You jumped in the gunner
Yep.
seat. Yeah.
Yep.
It's pretty fun.
'Cause you can kill the eggs real quick with that turtle.
Oh, I bet you can.
Like I've heard people talk about how it is mostly useless, but no, it was great for that one specific situation. Yeah, like I listened to this is related to the conversation we just had. I listened to a diatribe from someone who went on about how suboptimal using the turtle is. Like, but it's a turtle. It's
I
fun.
don't care. It's a giant siege turtle with rockets.
I don't care if it's DPS laws. I want to fire rockets at things. What part of this don't you understand?
And it has jump jets. It is a turtle with jump jets.
That can go
Your
stealth?
argument is invalid.
Like you're trying to objectively dissect this thing, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Anyway, okay. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.